emotional. And the reason it's emotional, of course, is the fact that the artist died at such a young age. The fact that his family is obviously wanting and needing to see this happen. And his work is very emotional.
Part of the specialness of who John was as an artist was that to him, art wasn't a game. It wasn't about being clever. It wasn't about being famous. It was about expressing as completely and truly as he could his vision of a world where everything material and real that surrounds us, everything that we know and love, is actually imbued with a sense of glory and otherworldliness without putting any religious or spiritual talk to that. John had a beautiful mind and a beautiful view of the world, and that's what he was all about, expressing that.
The individualism of John Brocke, an artist like no other in Canada.
For a lot of artists, I would say most artists, when you go to an opening of a show or there's an opening of their new work, you go to the gallery and there might be, 20 or 30 pieces all on the wall and little red dots by the ones that are sold or spoken for or not. And because of the way that John worked and the scale of the pieces he did, how long it took him to make them, that just never happened. He would finish one piece and it might be on view for a few days in Calgary, but because his work was sold through a gallery later on in Toronto, then there's just, I would say, very few people have ever seen more than one piece of John's at one time, right? So to have the opportunity to stand in a room that is replete with his images and to kind of have a sense of the body of his work is it's thrilling. Yeah, it's very thrilling.
The key word in my mind is dedication. And the reason I say dedication is purely because there are not many artists who would spend the time John spent in his studio on his own, developing his ideas, which again are highly individual. They tell stories that nobody else has ever written. But it's also the complete dedication to his technique, which was painstakingly slow on purpose. Although his paintings could be 16 feet, 12 feet, 10 feet, 8 feet high, massive paintings, he was generally working with brushes that were, to say they were one hair is a little too much, but very, very fine brushes. And he would take hours and hours to work over a square foot of one area of the painting. But then, of course, having to assimilate that whole square foot into the total surface and do it all. His paintings would take anywhere from a year to 2 years to finish.
I think one of the things that made John the artist he was, however unique that is, was not the scale of his work per se, although that's something that a lot of people look at, that's the thing that will hit them right off, is the scale of the work, the tiny, tiny, meticulous way that it was created and the length of time it took to create, or the fact that he didn't compromise on his vision, no matter what. But I think a lot of artists have that dedication to their craft and to their work. I think what is special to me about how John approached his work is that it wasn't just the vision, it was the scale of his vision, not the scale of his work. And the scale of his vision was that absolutely everything matters. He took as much time with fashioning the stretcher. Anyone will tell you, look at the back of one of his pieces and the stretcher frames are absolutely incredible. They're made by a world-class artisan who makes custom hand-makes furniture, right? So the kind of canvas that he used, the best Belgian linen canvas, the materials that he used. If he was doing gold leaf, it wasn't fake gold leaf. On the senator's portrait, it's 24 karat gold leaf. John was an excellent photographer, as you can tell from his reference work, and like the bulb and the timer, and run back into the photo himself. And Anyway, so we have a beautiful photo that was taken then, and of course he was killed 9 days later. You know what I hope that people might take away with them? Maybe a glimpse of seeing the world differently, of looking at the world in a different way, that the way that John's images speak, the way he paints, the way he renders detail, whether they might come away with fresh eyes just to enjoy the beauty of the world and to see the world in all its glory. Maybe most people wouldn't think they could compare themselves with an accomplished artist who's having a show at the Glenbow. But John was so completely humble and democratic in that way. He believed in the creative impulse in all of us and how significant it was to express that in whatever way. Bethany tells a really beautiful story of being in the studio when she was little, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years old, or 5, very young, and I forget, what piece John was working on at the time, but and the kids used to sit on the floor in the studio and work away at their own artwork, but this one time John, she said that she wanted to help paint, and John gave her the paintbrush that he was painting with and let her put some strokes on the canvas, and she remembers that really so very clearly, and yet as an adult now hasn't seen the finished work and has never stood in front of it, and it's going to be incredibly emotional for all of us to do that and to have that opportunity.